Welcome to Shahnameh, Book of Kings. Today we continue with the tale of Rostam and Esfandyar. As he listened to Bahman's words, the old man grew pensive. He said, "I've heard your message, though, and I'm pleased to see you. Now take my answer back to Esfandyar. Great lion-hearted warrior, any man who is wise considers the realities of a situation. A man like you, who is rich, brave, and successful in war, who has authority and a good name among his other chieftains, should not give his heart to malice and suspicion. You and I should act justly toward one another. We should fear God and not make evil welcome. Words that have no meaning are like a tree without leaves or scent, and if your heart's given over to greed and ambition, you will toil long and hard to see no profit from your pain. When a noble man speaks, he should weigh his words well and avoid idle talk. I've always been happy to hear you praised, to hear people say that no mother ever bore a son like you, that you surpass your ancestors in bravery, chivalry, and wisdom. Your name is known in India and Rum, and in the realms of wizards and witches. I praise God for your glory day and night, and I have always longed to set eyes on you, and to see for myself your splendor and graciousness. I welcome your arrival, and I ask that we sit together and drink to the king's health. I'll come to you alone, without my men, and listen to what the king has commanded. I'll bring you the charters past kings from Kobad to Khosrov have granted my family, and I'll make known to you the pains I've suffered, the difficulties I've endured, the good I've done for the past princes from ancient times up to the present day. If the right reward for all I have undergone is to be led in chains, would that I had never been born, or that once born I had soon died. Am I, who broke elephants' backs and flung their carcasses into the ocean, to come to court and publish all my secrets to the world, my arms tied, my feet hobbled in leather bonds? If it becomes known that I've committed any sin, may my head be severed from my body. May I never speak unseemly words, and you should keep yourself for cursing devils. Don't say those things that no one has ever said, and don't think your valor will enable you to catch the wind in a cage. No matter how great a man is, he can't pass through the fire or survive the seas if he can't swim or dim the moon's light or make a fox a lion's equal. Don't provoke me to a fight, because fighting with me will be no trivial matter. No man has ever seen fetters on my ankles, and no savage lion has ever made me give ground. Act as becomes a king. Don't let yourself be guided by devils and demons. Be a man. Drive anger and malice out of your heart. Don't see the world through a young man's eyes. May God keep you happy and prosperous. Cross the river. Honor my house with your presence. Don't refuse to see someone who offers you his allegiance. As I was Kobad's subject, I will serve you willingly and cheerfully. Come to me without your armed companions. Stay with me for 2 months. There's good hunting here. The waterways are full of fowl, and if you tire of this, you can watch my swordsmen in combat with lions. When you want to return to the Persian court, I'll load you with gifts from my treasury and travel side by side with you. I'll enter the king's presence and gently ask his pardon when I've kissed his head and eyes and feet in signs of submission. I'll ask him why my feet should be shackled. Now remember everything I've said and repeat it to noble Esfandyar." Bahman went back with his retinue to priests. Rustam remained in the roadway for a while and called Zavre and Faramaz to him. He said, "Go to Zal and tell him that Esfandyar has arrived, and that he's full of ambitious plans. I have a fine welcome prepared, something even more splendid than was customary in Kavos time. Place a gold throne in the audience hall and have royal carpets spread before it. The king's son has come here, and he's bent on war. Tell Zal that this prince is a famous fighter, and that he'd feel no fear confronted by the whole plain filled with lions. I'll go to him, and if he'll accept to be our guest, we can hope for a good outcome. If I see that he's a well-disposed young man, I'll give him a golden crown, set him with rubies, and I won't stint him jewels or fine cloth or weapons either. But if he turns me away, and I come back here with no hope of a peaceful resolution, then you know that my looped lariat, which has caught wild elephants' heads in its coils, is always ready." Zavaray said, "Give the matter no thought. A man who has no quarrel with someone doesn't go looking for a fight. I know no stronger or more chivalrous warrior in all the world than Esfandyar. Wise men don't act in evil ways, and we've done him no harm." Zavaray made his way to Zal's court, and Rostam rode to the shore of the river Hirmand, fearful of the harm he foresaw. At the river's edge he tugged on the reins, halting his horse, and prayed to God. When Bahman reached camp, his father was standing before the royal pavilion waiting for him, and he called out, "What did the hero tell you then?" Bahman went over all he'd heard. He began by giving Rostam's message, and then he described Rostam himself. He told everything he had seen, and much that he'd inferred, and ended by saying, "There's no one like Rostam anywhere. He has a lion's heart and a mammoth's body. He could snatch a sea monster from the waves. He's coming unarmed, with no corselet, helmet, mace, or lariat, to the banks of the Hirmand. He wants to see the king, and he has some private business I don't know about with you." But Esfandyar angrily turned on Bahman and humiliated him before his companions, saying, "No self-respecting warrior would ask advice from women for a warrior's task. No one who is soldierly or wise would send a boy on such an enterprise. Just where have you seen champions that you praise this Rostam for his fine, courageous ways? He's like a mammoth in the wars, you say. Do you want my men to fight or run away?" Then he said in an undertone to brave Pashtutan, "This Rostam still acts like a young man. Age hasn't broken him yet." He gave orders that a black horse be saddled in gold, and then he led his men toward the bank of the Hirmand, his lariat coiled at his side. Raksh neighed on one side of the river, and on the other the Persian prince's horse answered. Rostam urged Raksh from dry land into the water. When he had crossed, he dismounted and greeted Esfandyar. He said, "I have asked God continually to guide you here as you have now come in good health and accompanied by your army. Now let us sit together and discuss things courteously and kindly. As God is my witness, wisdom will guide me in what I say. I will not try to snatch any advantage from our conversation, nor will I lie to you. If I had seen Siavash himself, I would not rejoice as I do now seeing you. Indeed, you resemble no one so much as that noble and unfortunate prince. Happy is the king who has a son like you. Happy are the people of Iran who see your throne and your good fortune, and woe to whoever fights against you, since dust will overwhelm both his throne and his luck. May all your enemies be filled with fear. May the hearts of those who are against you be cut in two. May you remain victorious forever, and may your dark nights be as bright as the days of spring." When he heard him, Esfandyar too dismounted, embraced Rostam, and greeted him warmly and respectfully, saying, "I thank God to see you cheerful and confident like this. You deserve all men's praise, and our heroes are like your slaves. Happy is the man who has a son like you, who sees the branch he has put forth bear fruit. Happy is the man who has you as his support, since he need fear nothing from fate's harshness. When I saw you, I thought of Zaire, like his lion-like warrior and tamer of horses." Rostam replied, "I have one request, and if you grant it to me, my desires are fulfilled. Delight my soul by coming to my house. It is unworthy of you, but we can make do with what is there, and so confirm our friendship." Esfandyar answered, "You are like the heroes of old, and any man who has your reputation rejoices the land of Iran. It would be wrong to ignore your wishes, but I cannot turn aside from the king's orders. He gave me no permission to stay in Zabul, and with its chieftains you should quickly do what the king has ordered. Place the fetters on your own feet, because the king's fetters are no cause for shame. When I take you before him, bound like this, all the guilt will down on him. He must bind you, but my soul is grieved by it, and I would rather serve you. I won't let you stay in chains beyond nightfall, and I won't let the least harm come to you. Believe me, the king will not injure you, and when I place the crown on my own head, I will give the world into your safekeeping. This will not be a sin before God, and there is no shame in doing what a king demands. And when the blossoms and roses open, and you return to Zavalistan, you'll find that I'll be generous, and load you down with gifts to beautify your land. Rustam replied, I have prayed God that I might see you and rejoice, and now I've heard what you have to say. We are two noble warriors, one old, one young, both wise and alert, but I fear the evil eye has struck, and that I'll never know sweet sleep again. Some demon has pushed in between us. Ambition for a crown and glory has perverted your soul. It will be an eternal shame to me if a great chieftain like yourself refuses to come to my house and be my guest while he is in this country. If you can expel this hatred from your mind and undo the demon's work, I'll agree to do anything you wish, except be chained. Chains will bring shame, the ruin of my greatness, and an ugly aftermath. No one will ever see me in chains alive. My mind's made up, and there's nothing more to be said. Esfandyar answered, The heroes of the past are met in you. All you have said is true, and perverse paths bring no man glory. But Pashtun knows the orders the king gave me when I set out. If I come now to your home, and stay there enjoying myself as your guest, and you then refuse to accept the king's orders, I shall burn in hell's flames when I pass to the other world. If you wish, we can drink together for a day and swear friendship to one another. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, or what will be said of this later? Rostam replied, I must go and rid myself of these clothes. I've been hunting for a week, eating wild ass instead of lamb. Call for me when you're seated with your people ready to eat. He mounted Raksh, and deep in thought, galloped back to his castle. He saw his father's face and said, I have visited with Esfandyar. I saw him mounted, tall as a cypress tree, wise and splendid, as if the great Feridun himself had given him strength and knowledge. He exceeds the reports about him. The royal far radiates from his face. When Rostam rode away from the river Hirmand, Esfandyar was filled with foreboding. At that moment, Pashtun, who was his counselor, came into his tent, and Esfandyar addressed him. We thought this would be easy, but we found our way unsure over rocky ground. I shouldn't visit Rostam's home, and he, for his part, ought to stay away from me. If he neglects to come, I won't complain or summon him to sit with me again. If one of us should die in this affair, the other will be vanquished by despair. Pashtun said, My lord, who has a brother to equal Esfandyar? When I saw you two were not looking to fight with one another by heart, my heart opened like the blossoms in springtime, both for Rostam and for Esfandyar. I looked at what you're doing here, and I see that some demon has blocked off wisdom's way forward. You're religious, an honorable man, one who obeys God and his father. Hold back. Don't give your soul over to violence, my brother. Listen to what I'm telling you. I heard all Rostam said. He is a great man. Your chains will never bind his feet, and he will not lightly take your advice. The son of Zal will not walk into your trap so easily. I fear that this will be a long, drawn-out contest between two haughty warriors, and one with an ugly ending to it. You are a great man, too, and wiser than the king. You are a better soldier and a finer man than he is. One of you wants rejoicing and reconciliation, and the other one wants battles and vengeance. Consider for yourself, which of you is more praiseworthy? Esfandyar replied, But if I turn away from what my king commands, there's no excuse that I can bring. I'll be reproached in this world, and I fear God's probing of my life when death draws near. For Rostam's sake, I cannot throw away my life both here and after Judgment Day. There is no needle that can sew the eyes of faith tight shut, no matter how one tries. Pashtun said, I've given my advice, and it will benefit you physically and morally. I've said all I can. Now choose the right way, but remember that princess' hearts are not inclined to vengeance. Esfandyar ordered his cooks to prepare supper, but he sent no one to summon Rostam. When the food had been eaten, he lifted his wine cup and began to boast of his past exploits, toasting the king occasionally as he did so. Rostam was in his castle all this while waiting for Esfandyar's invitation. But as time passed and no one came, and then supper time was over, and he was still staring at the empty road, fury took possession of his mind. He laughed and said to his brother, "Have the meal prepared and call the men to eat. So this is our famous hero's way of behaving, is it? See that you never forget this splendid manner." Then he ordered that Raksh be saddled and richly caparisoned after the Chinese fashion, and said, "I'm going to tell this noble prince that he has now deliberately insulted me." The mammoth warrior mounted Raksh, whose neigh resounded the 2 miles, and made his way quickly to the river's edge. The Persian troops there were astounded and astonished by his massive frame and martial bearing, and said to one another, "He resembles no one but Esfandyar himself, and would be the victor in combat with an elephant. The king's unwise obsession with his throne has made him send a splendid hero to his death as he grows older, as all the king thinks of his wealth and his royal authority." Esfandyar welcomed him, and Rostam replied, "My fine young warrior, it seems you've developed new customs, new ways of behaving. Why am I unworthy to drink with you? Is this how you keep your promises? Now take seriously what I tell you, and don't be so foolish as to get angry with an old man. You think you're greater than everyone else, and you take pride in your chieftains. You consider me a lightweight, someone whose opinion doesn't matter. But know that the world knows that I, Rostam, scion of the great Nariman, black demons bite their hands in horror at my approach, and I fling wizards into the pits of death. When chieftains see my armor and my Raksh like a raging lion, they flee in terror. I have caught in my lariat's coils warriors like Camus and Kakun in China. I've dragged them from their saddles and bound their feet. I am the keeper of Iran and its lion-like chieftains, the support of its warriors on every side. Don't slight my overtures to you. Don't think of yourself as higher than the heavens. I'm seeking a pact with you, and I respect your royal far and glory. I have no desire for a prince like you to die at my hands. I am descended from Sam, before whom lions fled from their lairs, and you are the son of a king. For a long time now I have been the world's first warrior, and I have never stooped to evil. I have cleared the world of my enemies, and I have suffered countless pains and sorrows. I thank God that in my old age I have met with a fine, strong warrior willing to fight with a man of pure faith, one whom all the world praises." Esfandyar laughed and said, "And all this anger is simply because no invitation came? The weather's so hot and it's such a long way that I didn't want to put you to the effort of coming back. I said to myself that I'd go to you at dawn tomorrow and offer my apologies. I'd be happy to see Zal, and I'd spend time drinking with you both. But now that you've taken the trouble to leave your house and cross the plain to get here, calm yourself. Sit down, take the wine cup in your hand, and put aside your anger and irritation." And he moved over so that there was a place for Rostam to his left. But Rostam's response was, "That's no place for me. I'll sit where I wish to." Esfandyar ordered Bahman to vacate the space to the right, but Rostam retorted in a fury, "Open your eyes and look at me. Look at my greatness and at my noble ancestry. I'm of the seed of Sam, and if there's no place worthy of me in your company, I still have my victories and fame." Then the prince ordered that a golden throne be brought and placed opposite his own. Still enraged, Rostam sat himself down on the throne and toyed with a scented orange in his hand. Esfandyar addressed Rostam. "You're a powerful and well-intentioned hero, but I've heard from priests, chieftains, and other wise men that Zal has nothing but demon spawn and can boast of no better lineage. They hid him from Sam for a long time, and the court was in an uproar because he was so ugly, with a black body and white hair and face. When Sam finally saw him, he was in despair and gave orders that he be exposed on the seashore as a prey for the birds and fish. The Simorg came down, flapping its wings, and seeing no signs of grandeur or glory in the child to deter him, he snatched him up and took him to his nest. But even though he was hungry, Zal's puny body didn't seem worth eating. So he flung him naked in a corner of the nest where the child lived off scraps. Finally, the Simorg took pity on him, and after he subsisted on that Simorg leavings for a number of years, he set off, naked as he was, for Sistan. Now, because Sam had no other children and was old and stupid, he welcomed him back. My great ancestors, who were noble and generous men, gave him wealth and position. And when many years had passed, he grew to be a fine, tall cypress of a man, and a branch of this same cypress is Rostam, who by his valor and splendid appearance and fine deeds outreached the heavens until his ambition and excesses have procured a kingdom for him. Rostam replied, "Calm yourself. Why are you saying such offensive things? Your heart's filled with perversity, and your soul's puffed up with demonic pride. Speak, as becomes a royal personage. Kings say nothing but the truth. The Lord of the world knows that Sam's son Zal is a great, wise, and renowned man. And Sam was the son of Narimon, who was descended from Caramon, whose father was Hushang, the crowned king of all the earth. Haven't you heard of Sam's incomparable fame? There was a dragon in Tus, a monster that terrorized the beasts of the sea and the birds of the air. And then there was a wicked demon so huge that the Sea of China reached only to its waist, while its head towered into the sky and obscured the sun. It would snatch fish up from the ocean depths and store them beyond the sphere of the moon, and cook them by holding them against the sun. The turning heavens wept to see such a monster. These two hideous beings trembled before Sam's courage, and his sword perished by his hand. My mother was the daughter of Merob, under whose rule India flourished, and who was descended through 5 generations from Zahak, a monarch who lifted his head higher than all the kings of the world. Who has a more noble lineage than this? A wise man does not try to deny the truth. Any man who makes claims to heroism has to test himself against me. I hold my fiefdom by irreproachable treaty with Kavas, and it was renowned by the greatest of warrior kings, Khosrov. I have traveled the world, and have slain many unjust kings. When I crossed the Oxus, Afrasab fled from Turan to China. I fought for Kavas and Hamovaran, and when I journeyed alone to Mazandaran, neither Arshang, nor the White Demon, nor Sanji, nor Kula, nor Gandhi hindered me. For that king's sake, I killed my own son. And there never was such a strong, chivalrous, war-tried hero as Sohrab. It is more than 600 years since I was born of Zal's seed. In all that time, I have been the world's heroic champion, and my thoughts and deeds have always been one. I'm like the noble Faradin, who crowned himself and dragged Zahak from the throne and laid him in the dust. And then Sam, whose wisdom and knowledge of magic are unmatched in the world, is my grandfather. Thirdly, when I have girded on my sword, our kings have lived free from all anxiety. There's never been such pleasure in the court, or such security from evil's inroads. The world was as I willed it to be, ordered by my sword and my mace. I've told you 'tis so that you'll understand, that though you govern with a princely hand, you're new to this world's ancient ways, in spite of all your splendor and imperial might. You look out on the earth, and all you see is your own image and ability. But gazing at yourself, you're unaware of all the hidden dangers lurking there. I've talked enough. Let's drink, and may the wine dispel all your anxieties and mine." Hearing him, Esfandyar laughed, and his heart lightened. He said, "I've listened to the tale of your exploits and sufferings. Now hear how I've distinguished myself. First, I fought for the true faith, clearing the land of idol worshippers, and no one seen any warrior slaughtered. them in such numbers as I have, covering the ground with their corpses. I'm Goshtap's son, and he was the child of Lorasp, who was the child of Oranshah, a descendant of the Kyanid kings. My mother's the daughter of Caesar, who rules in Rum, and is descended from Son, the son of Feridun, the king who established the ways of faith and fair dealing, and without whose glory there would be little enough justice in the world, as no one can deny. You're a man who stood as a slave before my royal ancestors, you and your forebears too. I'm not saying this to cause dissension between us, but you received sovereignty as a gift from my family, even though you're now trying to kick over the traces. Wait now and let me tell you how things are, and if there's one lie in what I say, show it to me. Since Goshtap's been king, my chivalry and good fortune have been at his service. I was the man who was praised for spreading the faith, even though I was then in prison because of Gorzam's slanders. Because I couldn't help him, Lorasp was defeated, and our land was overrun by enemies until Jamash came to release me from my chains. The blacksmiths tried to free me, but my impatient heart was the sword that finally broke my fetters. I roared at their delay, and it was my own strength that smashed the shackles binding me. Our Rasp, our enemy, fled before me, and so did all his chieftains, and I harried the routed army like a savage lion. You've heard how lions and Ahriman beset me during my 7 trials, how I entered the brass fortress by a trick and destroyed everything there, how I sought revenge of our nobles' deaths, how I took war to Tehran and China and suffered hardships and privations there more terrible than a leopard inflicts on a wild ass, or than a sailor's hook that torments a great fish's gullet. There was a dark castle high on the distant ridge, shunned for its evil reputation, and filled with depraved idol worshippers. I took that castle. I smashed its images against the ground and lit the sacred flame of Zoroaster in their place. I came home with my God-given victory, and not an enemy of ours survived. Not a temple or an idol worshipper remained. These battles I fought. I fought alone. No man has shown the valor I have shown, but we have talked enough, if you agree. Take up your wine and slack your thirst with me. Rustam replied, Our deeds will be our memorial in the world. Now, in fairness to me, listen to the tale of an old warrior's exploits. If I had not taken my heavy mace to Mazandaran, where Kavas, Jiv, Gudaz, and Tus were imprisoned, their hearing shattered by the din of war drums, who would have disemboweled the white demon? Who could have hoped to accomplish such a deed by his own strength? I took Kavas from his chains back to the throne, and Iran rejoiced to receive him. I cut off their wizards' heads, and left their bodies buried and unlamented, and my only companions were my courage, my horse Raksh, and my world-conquering sword. And then, when Kavas went to Hamaveran and was imprisoned, I led a Persian army there. I killed their kings in war. King Kavas was a prisoner, heartsick and wretched, and Afrazab was harrying Iran. I freed Kavas, Jiv, Gudaz, and Tus, and brought them and our armies back to Iran. Eager for fame, careless of my own ease, I went on ahead in the darkness of the night, and when Afrazab saw my fluttering banner and heard Raksh neigh, he fled from Iran towards China. The world was filled with justice and my praises. If Kavas' blood had flowed then, how could he have sired Siavash, who in turn fathered Kay Khosrov, who placed the crown on Lorasp's head? My father is a great warrior, and he swallowed the dust of shame when he had to call your insignificant Lorasp his king. Why do you boast of Goshtap's crown and Lorasp's throne? Who says, Go now and shackle Rostam's hands? The heavens themselves don't issue such commands. I've never seen, not since I was a child, a man as headstrong and obstinate and wild as you. My courtesy is your excuse to treat me with contemptuous abuse. Esfandyar laughed with delight at his rage and grasped him firmly by the hand, saying, Great mammoth-bodied warrior, you're just as I've heard you described. Your arms as massive as a lion's thigh, your chest and shoulders like a dragon's, your waist lean as a leopard's. As he spoke, he squeezed Rostam's hand, and the old man laughed at the young man's efforts. Lymph dripped from his fingernails, but he didn't wince at the pain. Then he turned and gripped Esfandyar's hand and said, "My God-fearing prince, I congratulate King Goshtap on having a son as you, and your mother, whose glory is increased by bearing you." He spoke, and as he gripped tightened, Esfandyar's cheeks turned crimson. Bloody liquid spurted from beneath his nails, and the pain showed in his face. Nevertheless, he laughed and said, "Enjoy your wine today, because tomorrow, when we meet in combat, you won't be thinking of pleasure. I'll saddle my black horse, put on my princely helmet, and unseat you with a lance, and that'll put an end to your wrangling and rebellion. I'll bind your arms together, and I'll take you to the king. But I'll tell him that I found no fault in you. I'll go before him as a suppliant and clear all this quarrel. I'll free you from sorrow and pain, and in their place you'll find treasure and kindness." Rostam too laughed and said, "You'll tire of battles soon enough. Where have you seen real warriors fight, or felt the wind at a mace makes as it whistles by you? If the heavens will that no love's lost between us, we'll drink down vengeance, not red wine. Our fate will be ambush, the bow and lariat, the din of drums instead of the sound of lutes, and our farewells will be said with sword and mace. When we meet man to man on the battlefield tomorrow, you'll see which way the fight will go. I'll pluck you from your saddle and bear you off to noble Zal. Then he'll sit you on the ivory throne, place on your head a splendid crown that I have from Kokabad, and may his soul rejoice in heaven. I'll open our treasury's gates and lay our wealth before you. I'll give you troops. I'll raise your head up to the skies. Then, laughing and light-hearted, we'll make our way to the king. I'll crown you there, and that's how I'll show my loyalty to Goshtap. Only then will I agree to serve him, as I served the kind kings before. My heart will grow young again with joy, like a garden cleared of weeds. And when you're king, and I'm your champion, a universal happiness will come." Well, our story is ended for today, but I'll be back tomorrow with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends,